The year the famine hit hardest, my husband Jacob tied me to a wooden slaughter platform like a pig. With a calmness that still haunts me, he cut flesh from my body, drained my blood, and fed it to the villagers, telling them it would cure all illnesses and keep them full even without food. And they believed him. They worshipped him like some holy savior, kneeling to thank him while I, the one whose body was being sacrificed, rotted alive under the sun. They called it mercy. They said I was a clay Buddha who'd come to life. My blood, my meat, they said it was a blessing. But no one ever asked me how it felt to have your own husband carve into you with a dull blade. He used to kneel beside me after each offering, pretending to cry and beg for forgiveness, calling it his burden to carry. Claire, he'd say, this is for the greater good, for your return to immortality. And like a fool, I stayed silent, even though the pain burned worse than hellfire. I endured because, long ago, he'd saved my life when I was dying, and I thought I owed him. So I let him feed on me, day after day, until my belly swelled with our child. 8 months pregnant, barely breathing, I clung to the belief that something good would come of it. But when that city girl Rachel came, the whole village lit up like she was their messiah. She was an educated youth from the city, pretty, refined, and full of ideals. And Jacob, that snake, couldn't take his eyes off her. So when she collapsed from hunger, he made a choice. He cut me open without anesthesia, tore our baby out of my womb, and strangled the newborn right in front of me. Then he boiled our daughter into soup and fed it to Rachel. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Rachel is our hope, he told the villagers. If she dies, the future dies with her. And everyone nodded, praised him for his sacrifice, even bowed to him like he was a living god. But me? I was just the butchered wife, the witch they kept alive for parts. He kept pretending to care, bringing me that wretched bone broth with tears in his eyes, saying it was for my health. I bit his arm until my teeth hit bone, and still, he refused to kill me. As long as Claire doesn't hate me, he said, I'll do anything. But Rachel wasn't so sentimental. She rallied the village, told them the drought would never end unless they sacrificed me, fully burned me, bled me, ended me. And that's when I knew. These weren't innocent people. They were parasites. And what they didn't know, what none of them realized, was that the moment they completed the ritual, the divine power they drained from me would return in full. The punishment they feared would finally arrive. When the villagers pulled Jacob away from me, I bit off a chunk of his flesh. Blood streamed down his leg as he screamed. Rachel trembled but still took charge, dabbing his wounds with her lace handkerchief, crying fake tears as she ordered the others to rip my teeth out with pliers. Don't hurt my wife, Jacob begged. But he didn't lift a finger to stop them. One of them said, Brother Jacob, she's dangerous. What if she bites someone else? He hesitated, pretending to care, and I spat blood in his face. Rachel gasped like I'd ruined her dress. This fabric's brand new. How dare you? I laughed in her face and spat again. Didn't you say you'd serve the people? Then why do you have new clothes while they starve? She stuttered, but Jacob defended her. It's from her parents in the city. Besides, I nearly died gathering herbs in the rain to buy you clothes. Am I not good enough for you? The villagers murmured. They thought Jacob adored me, obeyed me, but they didn't know the truth. Jacob feared me, not loved me. If he loved me, he wouldn't have sliced me open like meat for trade. He wouldn't have slept with Rachel while I bled in the dark. If I'd had even an ounce of strength left, I would have torn them both apart. What a joke, I hissed. That new skirt of hers? I never even had one. You nearly died because you slipped on your way to sleep with her. I wish the gods had taken you right then. His face turned crimson. He picked up a broom and smashed it into me. The broom was stained with old blood mine. He used to beat me in secret, behind closed doors. And every time, afterward, he'd cry and kneel, sobbing like a child. Claire, I didn't mean it. I was just stressed from work.
He always made it about him.
You owe me, he'd say. You were dying when I found you. My mother starved so you could live. That line always got to me. I remembered the heavenly king's punishment, telling me I had to atone for past sins. So I kept enduring, even as I bled, even as they took everything. But this This was too much. I looked down at the gaping hole where my womb used to be, my hands shaking with fury. "Kill me, Jacob," I roared. "Do it. But no this if I die. I'll drag you to hell with me. A father who boils his child deserves no less." He flinched, ready to kneel again, his mouth already forming some pitiful excuse. I slapped him so hard my hand stung. "Claire," he stammered, "I was just too emotional." Rachel cut in, her voice sharp. "Brother Jacob, she's clearly gone mad. If you keep coddling her, she'll slaughter us all when she snaps." The villagers cheered her on. "Cut her tongue out," one shouted. "Burn her like Lynn," Olivia said. "If it rains, she'll die for a good cause." Jacob turned away from me, ashamed, his voice suddenly cold. "Then do it. Claire, don't worry, I'll burn you wild veggie dumplings every year after you're gone." I laughed bitterly. The $1 I made from embroidery, he used it to buy pork for Rachel. Meanwhile, I was stuck eating wild greens. They tied me down, stripped me bare, like livestock. My mind screamed to fight, but my body was too weak. I watched helplessly as they prepared the tools. Pliers. Salt. A butcher's knife. They didn't want me to die fast, they wanted a show. Rachel pretended to weep as she poured salt water into my open wounds. "I just want her to die with dignity," she whispered. The pain was unbearable. It felt like my body was on fire, every nerve flaring with agony. When I pushed her away, she stumbled dramatically into Jacob's arms. He held her tight, his eyes burning with rage. "Claire, why are you like this? Can't you see that Rachel and I are innocent?" Innocent. He dared to use that word. I bared my teeth, smiling like a demon. "Then die with me," I said. "Let's see if your heaven still wants you." That night, they lit the fire. They sang songs. They danced and prayed. And I sat, bound and bleeding, waiting. Because what they didn't know was this: the moment that fire consumed me, it would be them who burned next. The fire roared around me like a beast licking its chops, but instead of consuming me, it only made my skin glow. I sat there tied to the altar while the villagers cheered and prayed, their voices desperate and frantic as they begged the heavens to send rain. They had no idea what they were awakening. My flesh, untouched by the flames, was slowly healing, the deep gouges knitting themselves shut. Even the embers seemed hesitant to touch me, as if they sensed something ancient waking up inside me. As the hours dragged on and I remained unburned, their songs turned to whispers, and those whispers turned to panic. Some suggested burning me for 3 days and nights. Others thought burying me alive might work better. I saw their fear, their need to make sense of the unnatural, and it fueled me. Jacob, of course, said nothing. He just stood there staring, that same cowardice in his eyes, the kind that made me want to rip his spine out with my bare hands. But it was Rachel who snapped first. Jealousy is a powerful thing, especially when the man you stole starts looking at his wife like he regrets every choice he made. "Jacob," she hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear, "if you truly love this village, you'll end this with yourself." She was always good at manipulating him, wrapping her fake piety in a veil of community service. I spat at her feet and mouthed the word coward to Jacob just to remind him what he really was. As expected, he got mad. Not because of guilt, no. Because I bruised his ego. He ordered them to raise the flames higher, swearing to burn me to ash. But the sky had its own plans. That very night, as the fire blazed its fiercest, a downpour burst from the heavens. The flames hissed and died instantly. Rain soaked through my cracked skin and into the earth. It should have melted me into a pile of mud. After all, I was supposed to be a clay statue turned human. But instead, I stood up.
Whole. Alive.
Reborn. That's when they knew something was wrong. The villagers stared at me like I was a ghost, but they didn't move.
Too shocked.
Too terrified. Meanwhile, Jacob was busy rolling around with Rachel in the shed like nothing had happened. When the rain started, he froze mid-moan, realizing what it might mean. "She's a clay figure," he said, panicked, fumbling with his clothes. She could have melted. But Rachel, ever the temptress, wrapped her arms around him and cooed, "Don't worry, someone's watching her. You've already saved the village." Let me repay you tonight. I wanted to vomit. The next morning, a drenched villager burst into their room and screamed, "She's gone." I had vanished from the altar like a whisper in the wind. They didn't find any mud, no bones, just ashes and a strange, cold emptiness. While the villagers panicked, Jacob tried to pretend nothing happened. But when he saw me again, standing behind him, wet hair dripping, clothes tattered but eyes burning with fury, he pissed himself. Literally. He fell backward, trembling, his lips quivering. "Claire," I placed a hand on his shoulder, ice cold, and smiled. "Looking for someone?" His scream echoed through the hills. Rachel tried to play the good woman again, running to his side in her frilly dress, but I'd had enough. "Wow," I said, grinning, "you really did oversleep. Weren't you the same man who used to drag me out of bed before sunrise to do the laundry?" Jacob collapsed to the ground, hands clasped like I was some holy figure. "It wasn't me. It was her," he whimpered, pointing at Rachel. "She seduced me. You have to believe me. I never meant to hurt you. I only ever loved you." Oh, I believed him believed he was full of shit. I pulled a knife from my sleeve and stabbed it right into his thigh. He howled like a dog caught in a trap. Rachel screamed and ran to his side, sobbing like the melodramatic actress she was. "You monster," she cried. "He's your husband, and he boiled my baby," I said coldly. "So maybe we're even." That's when she tried to rally the village again, crying out to anyone who'd listen. "She's dangerous. If we don't stop her, she'll kill us all." A few young men stepped forward, cracking their knuckles like they had the guts to fight me.
Goo.
I let them come. I let them throw their punches and swing their sticks. And I took them down one by one. I didn't need a blade.
Just my bare hands.
Their bones snapped like twigs, and their screams filled the air with music sweeter than rain. Rachel tried to command them again, but something had shifted. The villagers looked at her differently now, less like a savior and more like a parasite. One woman spoke up timidly, "If you hadn't convinced Jacob to sacrifice Claire, maybe none of this would have happened." Another added, "She only ever hurt the ones who betrayed her. We never meant to, cowards, every last one of them. They'd sliced me, drained me, cheered as my baby was cooked, and now they wanted to play innocent." Rachel turned red with fury. "Ungrateful dogs. I helped you. I gave you advice. I fed you." She looked around, but no one defended her. That was when I smiled. "Rachel," I said sweetly, "if you want me dead, you can try. Let's see if you've got the strength." Her silence was answer enough. I turned back to Jacob, whose face was slick with sweat and snot. "Still think I'm a witch, sweetheart?" He didn't reply. So I leaned in and whispered, "Say you love me 3 times.
Say it like you mean it.
Maybe then I'll let you live." "I love you," he said instantly. "I love you, you bastard," Rachel shrieked, face contorted in betrayal. "You told me last night that you only loved me. That Claire wasn't even worthy of your spit." Jacob's face twisted in fear. "She's lying. She tricked me. She seduced me. I only wanted Claire." "You liar." Rachel lunged at him, slapping and clawing. "You killed your own child for me, and now you say it was my fault." Watching them tear each other apart was the best entertainment I'd had in years. I sat back and clapped my hands like I was enjoying a play. "You two deserve each other. Too bad you'll both die." I wasn't in a forgiving mood, and I wasn't interested in promises. I was the storm they summoned, and it was time they felt the flood. I raised my hand, and with a flick of my fingers, Jacob dropped to the ground, paralyzed, while Rachel screamed as her dress caught fire from the lingering embers of last night's altar. "Help me," she cried. But no one moved. They were too busy watching the fallout of the nightmare they helped create. The same villagers who'd once cheered for my death now stood frozen, unsure of whose side to take. And that was exactly how I wanted it, because the line had been drawn. And mercy was no longer part of the script. The rain had washed away their illusions, but not their sins. As I stood in the middle of the chaos, blood still trickling down Jacob's thigh from where I'd stabbed him, Rachel screamed in front of the villagers like a madwoman, her voice full of rage and desperation, but no one came to her aid. Not anymore. The fire she once used to try and destroy me now clung to the hem of her skirt, and she flailed like a puppet caught in her own trap. And Jacob? That pathetic excuse of a man trembled on the ground, eyes darting around like a cornered animal, too scared to help her, too selfish to speak the truth. I walked slowly toward them, my bare feet splashing through the puddles left from the night's downpour, my hair dripping, my butcher knife glinting with divine light that hadn't been there before. They called me a witch. They thought they could break me. But I was never just a clay figure. I was something ancient, something powerful, and now that they'd fed me to the flames, I had been reborn into what I truly was. Claire, Jacob whimpered, crawling toward me like a wounded dog. You have to understand, I only did those things because I thought it would help us help the village. Rachel convinced me. Shut up, I said, my voice calm and cold. You want to survive? Then beg. But don't lie. His lips quivered, but before he could speak, Rachel screamed, Don't believe her. She's not human. She's evil. She'll kill us all. She lunged for the villagers again, trying to rile them up. But they just stood there, silent, watching ashamed. Not a single soul moved to her defense. She murdered Jacob's baby, she cried, but the lie fell flat now. My knife lifted slightly, and she flinched like a coward, hiding behind Jacob. You burned my body, drank my blood, cut out my tongue, I whispered, and now you act like I'm the monster? I could feel the power flowing back into me. Every drop of rain, every cry of fear, every heartbeat pulsing with guilt, they fed me more than any offering ever had. My divine nature was no longer dormant. It was alive, vengeful, and insatiable. Jacob tried to regain control, to sound like the noble husband again. Claire, please. You're confused. Let me help you. We can go back. Back? I laughed, sharp and bitter. Back to the slaughter table? Back to when you sliced into me without blinking? You cut our daughter out of me, Jacob. And now you want forgiveness. He looked down, ashamed, but I wasn't done. I turned to the villagers, who stood in a trembling huddle. You all cheered when they dragged me to the altar. You clapped when they cut into me. You smiled while I screamed. So tell me, where are your smiles now? They shifted uncomfortably, some hiding their faces, others silently backing away. But no one answered. You called me divine, I said, and yet you treated me like meat. You said my blood could heal, but you never once asked if I wanted to bleed for you. Not once. One of the braver men stepped forward, holding a bowl of hot oil. This was supposed to silence you, he admitted. To take your tongue and stop your curses. I tilted my head and smiled. Then go ahead. Try it. He hesitated, looking at the bowl, then at me. Do it, Rachel urged, pushing him forward. She's bluffing. But his hands shook too much, and he dropped the bowl, spilling the oil across the mud. I moved faster than anyone expected, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him to the ground. My voice dropped to a whisper. Do you still want my tongue? He shook his head, eyes wide with terror, and I let him go for now. Rachel, however, wasn't done. She grabbed another bowl, filled with concentrated salt water, and ran toward me like a lunatic. I'll make you wish you were dead, she shrieked. She splashed it in my face, and for a second, I felt a sting sharp and biting, but nothing compared to the agony I'd already endured. I wiped the salt from my eyes slowly and looked at her with amusement. You think this hurts me now? I said. You think salt can purify what you've done? She backed up, stumbling, realizing too late that her theatrics no longer held power. I stepped forward, looming over her, and the villagers parted like reeds before a storm. They say I'm cruel, I whispered. They say I was banished because I slaughtered those who deserved it. Maybe that's true. But you all gave me no choice. And just like that, I raised my hand, and one of the villagers collapsed, his arm severed in a single stroke. Blood sprayed into the air, and screams followed, but I didn't stop. Another arm. Then a leg. I wasn't just punishing, I was judging. The screams filled the village like a chorus. And still, Rachel stood frozen. You'll go to hell for this, she shouted, voice cracking. You'll suffer for eternity. I looked her straight in the eyes and grinned. Honey, I already did. Now it's your turn. That was when the dagger hit me from behind. Someone had snuck up while I was distracted. The blade sank into my back, just above my heart, and for a moment, the pain made me stumble. But as I turned around, the villagers gasped. The wound, once deep and fatal, closed before their eyes. The blood stopped. The skin sealed. I stared down the man who'd stabbed Mehe, was missing a hand, one I'd taken earlier, and somehow still had the audacity to fight. Brave, I said, but stupid. I swung the knife and cut off what was left of his limbs, turning him into nothing more than a writhing stump. He screamed, begging for death, but I wasn't feeling merciful.
Not yet.
You wanted me to be a goddess? I said. Congratulations. You got what you wished for. Around me, villagers dropped to their knees. Some cried. Some begged. Some whispered prayers to the same gods who had ignored me for years. But none of it mattered, because I had been chosen not to be worshipped but to punish. Bring the pig slaughter table, I said, my voice echoing across the hills. Jacob's going to get a taste of what he gave me. They tried to stop me, to reason, to cry, but it was too late. The goddess they'd created wasn't here to save them. She was here to settle the score. They dragged the old butcher table from the edge of the village like it was some holy altar, but to me, it was a throne. Not one built for mercy or prayers, but for vengeance. The same stained slab Jacob had tied me to, the same wood that soaked in my blood. My child's blood now, it would taste his. The villagers obeyed without question, because they were too terrified to do anything else. Their faith had flipped overnight. I wasn't a clay figure anymore. I wasn't a broken woman. I was their reckoning, and no one dared look me in the eye. Jacob, tied down like the coward he was, whimpered as I hovered over him. He didn't scream.
Not yet.
That came later. Claire, please, he rasped, sweat mixing with tears, his body trembling. We were good once, weren't we? We were in love. Two saved you, remember? You were dying when I found you. I shared my Fudme mother's food. She starved for you. He always knew how to twist the knife emotionally. But that line about his mother? That lie used to gut me. Now it just made me smile. Your mother was already dying, I said flatly. From illness.
You didn't save me, Jacob.
You just found something to control. His mouth opened to protest, but I reached over and shoved his daughter's thigh bone, the one he had boiled into soup, into his face. Do you remember this? He recoiled in horror. That's not Claire, please. You don't get to pretend anymore, I whispered. You made me drink her. My own child. You spoon-fed me her bones. His lips trembled, but he had no words. He had no excuses. I saw the shift in his eyes when he realized there was no room left for mercy. That was when he started trying to bargain. We can leave, he said. We can start again. You're immortal now, right? We can have more children, build a new life. You think this is about a second chance? I laughed, low and sharp.
No, Jacob.
This is about making you feel every slice, every wound, every tear I held back for years. You don't get a second chance. You get justice. My knife hovered above his chest, and he panicked. Okay, fine. If this is what you want, then just kill me already. But death was too kind. I needed him to understand. So I stepped back and summoned the wild dogs, the same ones that used to scavenge the scraps of my flesh. I tossed the bone aside, and they lunged for it, fighting viciously over the taste. That's your legacy, Jacob, I said. You're not a man. You're meat. He screamed as I sliced into his thigh, slow and deliberate, not deep enough to kill, but enough to make him wail. Stop. Claire, I'm sorry, he sobbed. I was weak. I didn't know what else to do. You knew, I growled. You just didn't care. Blood poured down the table, pooling at my feet, and for the first time, I felt peace. Not satisfaction. Not joy. Just peace. Like balance was being restored. The villagers stood frozen, mouths agape, too afraid to stop me and too guilty to look away. And Rachel? She was crying behind them, face pale, mascara running, clutching at her own throat like she couldn't breathe. I caught her eye. You're next, I mouthed. She bolted. Not even a goodbye to Jacob. She just ran, tripping over her own dress, trying to escape the storm she'd helped summon. But you can outrun divinity. I followed her slowly, not because I needed to, but because I wanted her to feel the weight of every step. She collapsed at the edge of a muddy puddle, scrambling to scoop water in her hands. "She's made of clay," she shouted. "She'll dissolve."
I saw it.
"I know it." The puddle hissed when the water hit my skin, but I didn't melt. I didn't flinch. I reached down, scooped up a handful of mud, and rubbed it onto my burned arm. The skin healed instantly. Rachel's jaw dropped. Her lips parted in horror, and I crouched beside her, brushing the hair from her tear-streaked face. "Nice try," I whispered. "Now get up." She refused, so I yanked her to her feet and shoved the butcher knife into her hand. "You get two options. Kill yourself or kill Jacob." Her hands shook like leaves in a storm. "You're lying, am I?" I smiled. "Pick one." And then something changed in her eyes. That flicker of survival. That selfishness that had always driven her. She turned, dragging herself toward the altar. Jacob saw her coming and screamed. "Rachel, no. Don't do this. She's manipulating you." "You manipulated me first," she hissed. "You told me you loved me. That Claire meant nothing. That we were meant to build a better world together. Then you begged her for mercy in front of everyone." She raised the blade. "Rot in hell." And with one quick slice, Jacob's scream was silenced. But I wasn't done. "You did it," Rachel gasped, breathless, triumphant. "Now let me go." I tilted my head. "I never said I'd let you go." Her smile faded. "What?" "I said you had to choose kill yourself or kill him. But I never promised anything in return." Her face contorted with rage. "You tricked me." "No," I said simply. "I gave you a choice. You made it." She lunged at me with the knife, but I caught her wrist midair and twisted it until the blade clattered to the ground. "I gave you more chances than you gave me." And then I beheaded her.
No ceremony. No monologue.
Just clean, cold execution. Her body hit the mud like a sack of lies. Behind me, the villagers wailed. They wept not for Jacob, not for Rachel, but for themselves. Because they knew what was coming. And I wanted them to know. I wiped my blade clean on Rachel's dress and turned to face them, my eyes glowing with divine fury. "Anyone else?" I asked. A few dropped to their knees. A few turned to run. But the one that caught my eye was the man who had once told me, "You're blessed to serve this village." I remembered his face clearly. He was the first to eat from the soup made from my daughter's flesh. "Come forward," I said. He stepped out trembling. "Claire, please, too, to know." I shoved a bowl into his hands. "Drink it." "What is it?" he asked, voice trembling. "It's the same bone soup you once praised. Made fresh." He turned green. "Two can't. You drank it happily when you thought it was divine," I said, my voice a snarl. "So drink it now." He lifted the bowl to his lips, then retched, spewing the contents into the mud. "No," I said coldly. "You don't get to turn away now." I grabbed his jaw, pried it open, and poured the steaming liquid down his throat. He gagged, choked, begged, but I forced every drop in. "You called it holy. Then live by it." He dropped to his knees, sobbing, and I looked around at the rest. "Drink," I commanded. "Or die." That was all it took. One by one, they crawled to the pot and drank like pigs at a trough, tears streaming down their faces. The same ones who had cheered for my death, now weeping over a bowl of consequences. "You wanted salvation?" I said, laughing bitterly. "Congratulations. You've been saved." The sky above remained quiet, but in my chest, thunder rolled. And I knew it wasn't over yet. Because this was only the beginning. The blood hadn't even cooled when one of the villagers finally dared to speak again, a shaking voice cutting through the silence. "There are over 100 of us," he whispered, barely able to meet my eyes, "and she's only one." For a second, I almost laughed. That's the thing about humans' theory, always brave in packs. Strength in numbers, courage from cowardice. But what they forget is that no number of sheep can overpower a lion, especially one that's tasted the betrayal of every single one of them. Still, others began to nod. "Desperation makes people stupid." "If we rush her," another muttered, "maybe some of us can survive. Maybe God will protect us." The same God they prayed to when they tied me to that altar? The one who stayed silent as they carved me up like Sunday meat? I watched them all stand, dozens of them, old and young, fists clenched like I hadn't already slaughtered half their kin. I let them come. I didn't lift a finger. I wanted them to think, just for one foolish breath, that they had a chance. Then I raised my hand, snapped my fingers, and every single one of them dropped. No screams. No drama. Just a collective collapse, like puppets with their strings cut. The air was so still afterward that it felt like the world itself had paused. In the center of it all, Jacob, what was left of him, gurgled out a pathetic sob from the ground, blood bubbling from his throat, as if even his corpse couldn't believe what had just happened. But I was far from done. I looked at their bodies, and I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel guilt. All I felt was the balance finally tilting back toward what it should have been. I turned to where Rachel's soul still lingered, her spirit clinging to the edge of this world, unwilling to fall into the abyss. And I smiled, because I knew exactly where to send her. I raised both arms, the butcher knife glowing like a beacon in one hand, and the earth beneath us opened. Not metaphorically. Literally. The soil cracked, groaned, and split apart, revealing a void that pulsed with crimson light and smoke. The entrance to the 18th circle of hell. It didn't smell like sulfur or fire, it smelled like justice, raw and ancient. I grabbed Jacob's spirit by the neck, his soul shrieking as it peeled away from the useless meat he left behind, and dragged him alongside Rachel's. They kicked and begged and called me every name in the book, witch, demon, monster, but I didn't flinch. You don't get to name me anymore, I said coldly. You already carved your story into my flesh. Now, it's my turn to write the ending. I cast them into the pit. But I didn't just send them there to roti, made sure their punishment echoed for eternity. They were reincarnated as pigs, meant to be slaughtered again and again for the next 1,000 lifetimes, trapped in the same fear and pain they once forced on me. I watched them squeal as the void swallowed them. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just let the silence return. For the first time in years, I was alone with my thoughts. No more villagers shouting orders. No more Rachel shrieking in fake righteousness. No more Jacob pretending to be a savior while carving me like livestock. Just me. And justice. I waited, expecting retribution from the heavens, punishment from the gods for going too far. But all I received was a scroll delivered on a gust of wind that shimmered with divine power. A golden seal. A single line of divine script. Claire Morgan, Judicator of Wrath, report to the 18th Circle. Position granted. Enforcer of punishment for the vile. I blinked. The heavens weren't punishing me. They were promoting me. Because even divinity has its breaking point. And when gods grow tired of evil, they send someone like me to clean it up. I became the official ruler of the most merciless court in hell, assigned to judge souls who'd committed the unforgivable. The ones who smiled while they tortured, who lied while they killed, who pretended love while they poisoned you with it. And believe met here were a lot more Rachels and Jacobs down there. Generations later, when their reborn pig souls crawled their way back to hell again, this time for intentionally harming others in another life, I was waiting. The moment they entered my chamber, I stood behind my tribunal with that same butcher knife in hand and greeted them with the same grin they'd once ignored. Miss me? They screamed. I didn't care. Take them, I ordered the guards, and give them the full tour. Let them experience the warmth of our hospitality. That's when the shrieking began. And this time, I didn't look away. Over the years, their screams became familiar background noise. A steady hum of poetic justice. But none of that could fill the hole they left in Menet, the one carved by my child's death. That emptiness stayed. Until one day, Hades himself called me into the Hall of Souls. He held out a scroll that glowed so brightly, I had to shield my eyes. We found her, he said. My heart stilled. Your daughter. Reincarnated. This time, she's safe. She's been born into wealth, into love, into light. You did what the heavens couldn't. You balanced the scale. I trembled. After everything I had endured, the only thing that still mattered to me was that she had a chance at a life untouched by pain. I didn't need to hold her. I didn't need to interfere. Just knowing she had a warm bed and not an altar under her was enough. So I watched from afar, never revealing myself. She grew up laughing, loved by her new family. She danced in sunlight and never once had to bleed for someone else's survival. That was enough. That was justice. And it reminded me that vengeance, no matter how brutal, can sometimes give birth to mercy not for the wicked, but for the innocent caught in their storm. So when people say I'm cruel, that I became the very thing I swore to destroy, I let them talk. Because they weren't there when I begged for my life. They didn't taste the salt water Rachel forced into my mouth. They didn't see my baby's bones in Jacob's hands. But I did. I lived it. I survived it. And I made damn sure no one like them ever would again. That's not cruelty. That's justice with a memory. Justice with a heartbeat. Justice that finally learned how to strike back. Some people think vengeance ends when the blood dries, when the screams stop echoing, when the last body falls. But that's the thing, they never understand what comes after is so much quieter, colder, and lonelier. Because revenge doesn't end with justice. It ends with silence. That eerie, empty kind of silence where even the wind doesn't know how to blow. After I secured my seat in the 18th circle of hell and carved names into the flames myself, after I punished Jacob and Rachel and every last soul who fed on me like parasites, I thought I'd feel whole. But the truth is, there's no wholeness left for women like me. We get rebuilt out of broken things. Our strength comes from stitching ourselves together with anger, and our bones rattle with memory. Years passed down there in the pits of the underworld, and I watched cycle after cycle of corrupted souls return, wearing new faces but the same rotten hearts. Some had been warlords, others had been corrupt officials, and a few even had smiling family portraits in their past lives, as if that could excuse the cruelty they handed out in private. But none of them were ever ready to meet me. I became a legend in the underworld. The enforcer. The slaughter saint. The witch queen of hell. Funny how a village woman who once begged for a cup of water was now feared by devils themselves. But I didn't do it for fear. I did it for the promise I once made in front of my daughter's grave that no one would suffer like her again. Then one day, something changed. Hades summoned me with that same heavy expression he wore when he handed me her reincarnation file. "She's ready," he said simply. "Ready." I blinked. To remember. The concept hit me like lightning. My daughter, reborn into a life of privilege and love, untouched by the hell I crawled through, is about to remember the life that ended in my womb. The life taken from her before her first cry. And I was terrified. I'd wanted her safe. Sheltered. I didn't want her to carry this pain. But the heavens had their laws, and fate doesn't always ask for permission. When I visited her in the mortal realm, I wore a borrowed face, one of the many privileges of being divine. She was grown now, 21, beautiful, successful, the beloved eldest daughter of the richest man in the city. She had laughter in her voice and fire in her spirit. I watched from a distance as she scolded a man for mistreating a dog, then bought the dog herself. That was my girl. Still fierce. Still righteous. But one night, as the moon glowed low and heavy, I felt the shift in the air. Her soul trembled. The memories began to bleed through. I saw her stare at a bowl of soup too long, drop her spoon like it had burned her fingers. I saw her wake up crying from dreams she couldn't explain, dreams of fire, salt water, and a woman screaming her name. "Claire," she whispered in the dark, though she didn't know why. Her adoptive mother thought it was stress. Her father tried to distract her with shopping trips. But you can't bury trauma that lives in your soul. It always claws its way back up. I visited her again, this time letting her see me. Not as a stranger, not as a god, but as a woman. A survivor. A mother. She looked at me, and her eyes widened. "Do I know you?" I smiled, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Not yet," I said. "But you will." She stared at me for a long time, her hand hovering in the air like she wanted to touch me, but didn't know why. "You feel familiar. Like a dream I forgot to wake up from." I wanted to pull her into my arms, to tell her everything, but I held back. It wasn't time. The past would come when she was ready, and when it did, I knew it would break her. So instead, I said what no one ever said to me when I was broken. You are safe. You are loved. And no one will ever carve pieces out of you to feed the world again." She blinked, and a tear slid down her cheek. She didn't know why it hit her so hard. But I did. Because her soul still remembered the agony of a knife that tore her from my body. And her heart, no matter how new, still ached for justice she never got. I left before she could ask more. I had to, because gods may be cruel, but mothers are soft in ways they'll never admit. Back in the underworld, the other enforcers tried to understand my mood. They asked if I was angry she would never fully remember me, that she'd live her new life, never knowing I had died screaming her name. But I wasn't angry. I was grateful. Because sometimes justice isn't about being remembered, it's about making sure the pain stops with you. That it doesn't pass on like some cursed heirloom. That your daughter never wakes up strapped to a butcher's table. I built my throne on vengeance, but I built my legacy on protection. I didn't need to be worshipped. I didn't need statues. I didn't even need her to call me mother. I just needed her to live. And she did. So when mortals ask if hell is real, I say yes. I lived it. I ruled it. I made it mine. And when they ask if the gods care, I say maybe not all of them. But one did. A clay Buddha who is never meant to bleed, who was carved open and fed to the masses, who died with her daughter's name on her lips and rose again with fire in her eyes. That woman cared. That mother cared. And even if the world forgets me, even if my name is lost in some scroll buried beneath ash and dust, there will always be one soul on earth who carries a piece of my flame. And that is enough. I am Claire Morgan. I am the goddess of vengeance. I am the butchered, the reborn, the flame that cannot be snuffed out. And when the guilty cry for mercy, they will learn mercy does not live here. Only justice. And justice, my dear, has a mother's rage.